It was only a little while ago that Gabe Newell, co-founder of Valve, was interviewed at what appears to be a school of some sort in New Zealand. When he was asked if updates were headed to TF2, he stated, and I quote, "Yes, we have updates for Team Fortress 2. This response he gave, as expected, immediately spawned a hype wave across the greater TF2 community. But then it got me to start thinking. I've been playing this game since 2012 and I'm kinda jaded by this point, so my initial response was literally, I still don't know if I believe it, despite the words coming from Gaben himself. Regardless, the idea of a new TF2 update after all these years is always welcome in my opinion, so I started thinking about and researching all the stuff that I would want to see on this potential Gaben update, even if I think most of it's too far-fetched to actually happen. Well, without any further ado, here we go. So, right off the bat, I would like to say that most people are probably looking for an update, super major along the lines of Jungle Inferno, and while I do love major updates, and I'm pretty sure everyone else would love to have one of those, I would personally take performance over new content any day. Basically, since the beginning, TF2 has ran really, really weirdly, and it has a ton of quirks. And that leads me perfectly into my first change. TF2 only uses 3 threads maximum. Think of threads as like individual processors in your computer. While most computers only have one processor, they have multiple cores, which allows your computer to multitask and work on a bunch of different things at the same time. Most modern CPUs have at least 4 cores and 8 threads, thanks to the popularity of Ryzen. And TF2 only using a maximum of 3 is leaving a ton of performance on the table. And you can clearly see that TF2 is only using 3 threads if you disable hyperthreading, which disables the 2 threads for every core thing you usually see on high-end Intel and AMD processors. Whereas in most other workloads, having hyperthreading is actually an improvement, so that's why it's so important to most people. In fact, according to the Steam hardware survey, 40.77% of users have a quad-core processor. So the majority of users on Steam have just some extra core that's not being used at all by TF2, and I think that is a gigantic missed opportunity. Alright, next up, Steam API calls can be kind of expensive, meaning costly to performance in a lot of cases, and TF2 definitely takes advantage of that, and not in the good way. So according to Mastercoms of Team Comtress 2, Mastercom's commit log agrees with the claim that there are a lot of expensive Steam API calls in TF2, so Team Comtress 2 opts to just remove most of them. Now, I haven't tested this thoroughly at all, so I could be completely wrong, but I think this could be a huge factor in performance drops. Speaking of Team Comtress 2, what is that? Well, for those of you who don't know, Team Comtress 2 is a mod of TF2 using the source code leak from a while ago. It's developed by Mastercoms, who works on Masterconfig. And the primary goal of Team Comtress 2 is to provide optimization patches and new features for the game, because TF2 is kind of broken and it could be fun to experiment with new stuff. Now, I will say that Team Comtress 2 hasn't received a new commit since November, meaning the code has not changed at all since then. But I have downloaded the latest release, and the performance testing I've done thus far yields fucking amazing results, honestly. So, yeah, I tend to believe what Mastercoms is talking about. Alright, another thing I'd like to see changed in the game is a fix for NPC stutter. The issue is caused by INTERP, and you'll see it mostly if you have your INTERP modified to a really low value. If you're playing on Halloween maps, you see the horsemen jittering all over the place. Same with Marasmus and the skeletons and whatever. Now, you can remedy this if you're a server owner by changing NB update frequency from the default of 0.1 to 0.03, but this does impact performance. It is an additional load that you'll have to deal with, and you also need source mod to use it because it's a cheat. I did make a video about this phenomenon a couple years ago. Check the cards if you're interested in that, where I go more in depth on the issue. Now, this fix would likely involve changing how NPCs work in the game, so it might be, a little unrealistic. I'm not sure exactly how this stuff works. I'm not really a source developer. Anyway, whatever. Next topic. If INTERP causes so many problems, I think we should just remove it. Now, you might say, Aaron, that's fucking crazy. That's how the whole net system works, probably. And yeah, maybe. But consider this. INTERP is fucking ancient. The base networking code in TF2 has likely been left alone since 2007. Now this, I haven't really checked myself, so I could be wrong. But Team Comtress 2 does it. They just flat out remove INTERP. And you know what other game does that? CSGO! They don't have INTERP. I think the modern internet, even though internet access is still really shit in a lot of places, I think we've evolved past the need for INTERP, is what I'm saying. And this could also have a couple benefits for the game. I'm hoping this means I can stop tying NPCs to INTERP like I was talking about. And you could also fix the bullshit backstabs people like to get by cranking their INTERP up to like 5 or some shit and going on a server. That stuff is annoying and I want it to stop. Alright, next up I got a bunch of small tweaks that I think would be good for the game. What I just went over was a bunch of the major changes I wanted to see, but now we're getting into the really nitty-gritty, like weird little details that I'm pretty sure very few people have thought about prior to now. And yeah, I stole a bunch of these from the Team Contrast 2 changelog, but still, I believe in it, so here we go. First off, TF ViewModel offset, I've mentioned in videos forever ago. It's a command where you can change the X, Y, and Z coordinates of the view model. So now you wouldn't have just view model min mode and view model FOV. You could position the view model however far out or close in, up or down, or wherever you want it to be. And I think that is an awesome accessibility option. As it stands right now, this is a cheat command, meaning that you can't really use it feasibly. And what kind of sucks is that I'm pretty sure these view model offsets are unlocked in Counter-Strike and Portal 2. So yeah, those games let you do it. So let's backport it, fellas. Let's get this shit in TF2. Let's do it. Another thing I want fixed is what is commonly referred to as slope bug momentum canceling. Now, I don't entirely know how this works because I haven't looked super deep into it, but in other Source games, a speed boost would normally happen, whereas in TF2, it just resets your movement to walk speed. I'm pretty sure this is something of a deterrent against b-hopping, and it's already been fixed in a popular Source mod plugin called Ground Fix, which is available on GitHub. But regardless, stopping in your tracks is super annoying, so let's get that shit fixed, fellas. Next up, I would like a console command to open the spawn doors while the game is in a waiting for players state. Now you might be asking why this would be necessary at all, because in casual mode and competitive mode, during that state the doors are already open, but that's the problem. I've been running a community server for a couple years on streams and stuff, just so we can play custom maps and have fun, and while the game is waiting for players to join the server, it just locks the spawn doors. So on, for instance, a payload map, right? You could be on the red team, you could walk out of spawn and start moving around and learning the map a little bit before the game starts, but the blue team's just stuck inside because the doors don't open until the setup time's over. Now, if you've played on Uncletopia, you may notice that the doors do open during waiting for players, and I thought that was awesome, so I got in contact with Dane, and he sent me to his GitHub for his servers where the plugin was. But I think it's kind of lame that I had to go out of my way and ask Uncle Dane himself to find a plugin to fix such a small little issue. I mean, casual mode already does this. It couldn't be too hard to implement a command. Valve, please fix. Next up, you may notice on certain hats and cosmetics, particularly from the Jungle Inferno contract rewards, sometimes you'll be looking at them and they'll just be glowing a solid color. It might be yellow or white or blue or red, just whatever. That is due to a really weird material error that I cannot believe has not been patched yet. It should be a really easy fix. I'm certain there are add-ons on the workshop that already have done it, so all Valve probably has to do is merge those changes, and no more bleeding eyes and fucked up cosmetics. Now this next one is, I have no idea how realistic this is. I would like for the loading time in the backpack to be reduced. Now, you might say it's not that bad, but if you have a bunch of decorated weapons, it gets awful. I think what happens is with certain skins, it has to generate a preview image on the fly, and I think that kind of sucks. So what I think could fix it is Valve could cache these images, whether it be on a local hard drive or on a Steam server somewhere, and then the game could just load those. That would definitely speed up loading times. Honestly, I'd be fine with either one. I guess this wasn't really as unrealistic of a solution as I thought, huh? Anyway, yeah. Loading takes too long, please fix. Coming up next, I would like the rest of the TF2 Community Fix-Up Pack to be implemented. Now this is a popular collection of workshop add-ons that has been slowly growing through the years, I think. And a couple of them have been added already, like HUD fixes from Critical Flaw. And these are just objectively changes that fix things in the game and are good, so like, why not put them in? Let's do it, get the rest of them in there. Let's go. Now, I remember this specifically being a thing on Team Contrast 2, but the Meet Your Match voice lines, I don't know if you've noticed them at all, because they're really quiet. I mean, I get it. Recording and playing back audio is not easy. That's why there's a bunch of different plugins and filters and compressors and doodads and whatnot. So I don't really blame them for this being an issue. But like, the meet your match voice lines are inaudible compared to everything else in the game, pretty much. And on top of that, the heaviest voice lines are a bit of a weird pitch. Like, I don't know, they're a bit higher pitched than normal. It doesn't sound quite right. I heard the modified lines from Team Comtrust 2, and they sound much closer to what the heavy actually is supposed to sound like. So, if some Valve employees got the time, why not? This is an idea. Next up, this bug has been in the game forever, and I think it's time to squash it. Fix incorrect item descriptions in the KILLCAM. I'm pretty sure you've seen it before. You walk out of spawn, you immediately get headshot by a sniper 800 million miles away, and it zooms in, it goes and it says that he killed you with a picture of a sniper rifle, and then underneath it says level 31 candy cane. Yeah, you've definitely seen it before. I don't think I have to explain. That's not right. Valve, please fix. Next up, a bit of a small one. Fix sound scripts not being loaded on workshop maps. Now, I'm not sure if any of you know this, but there is a bug in Team Fortress 2 maps where a sound script will not load if you're playing a map from the workshop. Now, it's totally fine if you're not playing a map on the workshop. Like, for instance, if you're playing the currently released in-the-game version of Cursed Cove. That works just fine with all the custom voice lines and ambience and stuff. But if you try to play the workshop version, none of that is audible at all. That's because all these sound files and references to them are stored in what is called a sound script in the map. And for some reason, if the game runs them off the workshop, it just doesn't load right. Now, you can still reference raw WAV and MP3 files, and those will load just fine, but not being allowed to use a sound script means that you can't override default stuff in the game or create soundscapes, and I think that's a problem, so, yeah, Valve, please fix. Next up, compress all the maps that have not yet been compressed. This one is a really, really easy change. It just takes a bit of CPU time. I made a video about this a while ago, which you can check in the card in the corner. But basically, map compression allows maps to take up less space on the hard drive when they're not being used. And then as the game loads the maps, it just decompresses them on the fly, and then they're ready to play. I think this is just a good idea to reduce the amount of space TF2 takes up on the disk, because a lot of modern games coming out taking up well in excess of 60 gigs is ridiculous, and any space savings at all is a good thing in my opinion, so why not? Let's do it. A lot of maps are already compressed, like Borneo, 2-4, I think Granary, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's do it! Finish the job, let's go! Alright, this one could be a game changer. Alright, you ready to hear it? Let's go. Provide a button to clear the downloads folder and temp files. I'm certain a bunch of TF2 players just play the game to trade and screw around on like Slender Fortress or trade servers or whatever. And over time, those downloads can really add up. To make it a little easier for less tech-savvy people, I propose there be a button somewhere in the game where you can just, with a couple clicks, like click the button, then there's a confirmation dialog or something, you can delete the downloads and temp folders in the game. That would definitely help clear up disk space for people who have no idea what to do in order to clean those things themselves. Or maybe they're just too uncomfortable. Either way, a good change. Let's do it. Next up, enable the developer console by default. I think a lot of people use the dev console all the time, every time they play the game, so yeah, let's just make it a default. Why not? Alright, so I've covered the brunt of what I want to see in a new update, but I do have one last thing, and a lot of you are probably surprised you didn't hear it yet, but I would like for them to update the default settings. Now, no, this is not a meme. I'm being serious. Network settings and INTERP in the game are not visible anywhere in the options, and I think that's kind of ridiculous. You have to rely on the developer console to get a better networking experience in this game, and that is a huge turnoff to people who have no idea what a developer console is, if they're not comfortable with entering commands, they've never used a command line before, and they don't trust configs or something like that. I don't know, it could be anything. And on top of all that, TF2's been hitting peak player numbers recently. Probably new players are coming into the game, so, I mean, maybe more people are experiencing the shitty default settings the game has, and maybe they're coming from, like, consoles where you can't really customize very much, so they have no idea they can install a config and kiss those problems goodbye. I don't know. The default settings are benefiting nobody in this day and age. I think we should turn up the FOV, turn up command rate, update rate, make the INTERP lower. You know, you get it, whatever. So, in conclusion, this is the kind of stuff I'd want to see in a future TF2 update. Now, I have no idea how realistic any of this stuff is, but still, I'd like to see all this stuff before any, major game content. But that's my opinion. If you have any ideas, leave them down in the comments and I'll give them a read and I'll see what you think. Anyway, that's it for this video. Catch me on Twitch over at twitch.tv/airmaster. I stream at 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. TF2 always on Thursdays. And that's about it. Have a good one.